Hey there, Adrienne Elise here. Welcome to the Gaia Daily for July 3rd through 6th, 2020. How are you doing? Well, we're heading into this full moon in Capricorn energy happening on the 5th in most of the world, happening in the US on the 4th, the 4th of July Independence Day celebration. And what a celebration it can be for us right now, as we are being given an opportunity with this Capricorn full moon to completely step out of the old stories, the old contracts, the loyalty contracts, the constructs of identity from lifetime after lifetime we've been living by for so long, but don't really fit the truth of who we are. Because this full moon happens right in between this two sets of exact conjunctions with Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn, the epic 2020 astrology. Jupiter expands and brings opportunity to whatever it comes into contact with. In this case, in Capricorn, Pluto breaking down the structures of our life that no longer fit the truth of who we are. That, in reality, when you can step back, is the bigger picture of what's happening on this earth right now. All of the systems of our life, of the systems, the constructs, of structures of our life are up for review on every level. So for the supernova soul, that means these identity constructs of who you've been and the roles you've played in past lives. And so what happens is we create these. Every lifetime we live, we have a story. And then if that's unresolved story, we also have we have contracts that are related to those old stories. And this is everything that's on the table right now. And so it's like there's this crack in the code and a bridge. What we've been doing is breaking down, right? And this is kind of the energy, breaking down, burning bridges. And now it's time to build a new bridge. Because there's a very beautiful configuration that's happening starting with Mars and Aries and Mercury and Cancer through these signs. The first signs of the zodiac, which speak to the beginning of life and forming a new body, forming a new identity, forming a new life, everything we're doing right now, trying to get from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. And that beautiful star pattern we've been seeing throughout this year is back. It's loose. The planets aren't in exact connection with each other, but very, very close, and it's speaking to us. This star pattern happens when the planets are in sextile to each other, which is, in this case, they are actually semi-sextile, one sign apart. So 4 signs all lined up. Mars in Aries, Uranus in Taurus, Venus in Gemini, and Mercury in Cancer. So the closest planets for this period of time is Venus in a semi-sextile relationship to Mercury in Cancer. Venus having turned direct now. Venus is moving tomorrow to 7 degrees, or actually on Sunday, on the 5th, on the day of this full moon, Venus is coming out of that deep dark cave of the Venus retrograde, and indeed we're moving forward into a new chapter. And that new chapter, that energy, it always sounds good. It's like, yes, get me out of here, let's move, let's do something. But in this case, Venus coming out of retrograde, of course, we talked about just how it's bringing everything to the surface of what's been subconsciously not working in our life around relationships, our relationship to ourself, our values, what we care about, what we want. And in Gemini, it's about reorienting the mutable signs and, of course, disorienting, being totally confused. Because if you've been living in a structural reality, conceptual structural reality that doesn't fit who you are, and then that more true part of you is landing, of course, your life has to fall apart. And nothing makes sense. and everything you thought you were doing and heading in the direction isn't quite right. And then also the Venus retrograde is bringing up huge energies of like where your life doesn't fit what you wanted, and feeling like this, the North Node in Gemini also, and then the South Node in Sagittarius, and old stories that didn't get completed. And this is like regrets in our life of like, oh my gosh, I've wasted all this time. But the message is that we've been doing, Supernova Soul has been doing lifetimes of work, undoing lifetimes of patterns that you couldn't quite do that until you got to this life with this energy on the planet right now. It's part of the intensity of these times, is rapid shifting. And so it's like you had to pile up of all this karma and all these constructs and stories of these past lives. And now it's like, got to sort through it and so that we can get to the point of really living. This is what I see in astrology charts a lot in the Supernova Soul. It's like, okay, well, you have a whole bunch on your plate and you've had to spend a big portion of this life undoing all these other lives. But your whole point, your whole desire, although you can release your contracts, your karma in this lifetime, it looks like, but that's not why you're here. You're not here just to release yourself. You're here to have your full expression of who you are. And you've been operating on about 10%, if you're lucky. That's a lot, right? That's what is coming through around these souls. You're operating in this tiny bit amount of your potential. And yet your goal for this incarnation right here on the earth right now was to have a full expression of your power and your potency. And then it's like, oh, how can you even get a conceptual reality of what that might be or look like? No wonder we're so disoriented. And this Capricorn full moon is about like burning bridges, but also building bridges, because what happens, this happens around 13 degrees, the full moon in Capricorn. And that's not that far from Uranus has just made it to 10 degrees, brand new territory for Uranus and Taurus. Speaking about like, yeah, we're infusing our earth, our physical form. We're having radical changes, revolutionary changes in our value system, our money system, our financial system, what really matters. Like Uranus is bringing home the revolutionary changes to our physical reality. But the moon in Capricorn is not that far, for this full moon, is not that far from a trine with Uranus. And so it's saying the Capricorn energy, of course, is about breaking down all the stuff that's not working. But the trine to Uranus is saying, yeah, because we're building something new and better. Don't forget. Don't forget this chaos, darkness, shadow. It's all about building something better. And we're being asked really clearly and very profoundly to step up into our role in that. And it's kind of scary. It's like going from this whole Venus retrograde of like just stuck in the past and just stuck and just dark and just heavy and confused. And now it's like, what? I gotta step up to the plate like right now? And that's definitely the deal for these souls is, it's time to break those ties with whatever's holding you in those lower timelines. And this full moon is saying like, yeah, build the bridges, burn the bridges of the past and build a new bridge. And it's kind of weird because it's like I'm seeing a suspension bridge, like we're suspended, right? And it's pretty wobbly. The further you get along the bridge, the more uncertain it is and wobbly it is. And but we're being asked to step on that road. And maybe that's an important message for us. It's like those new timelines are kind of trying to come in, right? But it's wobbly. It's like, I don't know what's going on. So know that, part of the message here too is like, we are building these new bridges, but we're not doing it alone. That's a group project. And it feels alone. The programming says you're alone. The programming, there's very, very powerful, deep programming that says that if you say yes to spiritual initiation, that's a solo journey. You're completely alone. And you're just going to be floating out there in the universe all by yourself. And that's a deliberate program that's been created through trauma programming in past lives to keep you. That, and how we talked about in the last video about how spiritual ascension energies are going to hurt the earth, break the earth. It can't handle it. Your body can't handle it. You're going to die. You're going to be all alone. There's a whole set of stories that go along with these new energies coming in. And that's so much of what is coming up right now for people. And so where we've been feeling stuck in the past with the Venus retrograde, now it's like recognizing how much we've been clinging to the past because of our fear of our potential and fear of the future and fear of that divine timeline and the programming. So maybe the Capricorn full moon is about breaking contracts, authority contracts, that has everything to do with these programs, these fear programs. But it's also about facing, understanding that this fear has been holding you back. And I've seen again and again, past life after past life, this fear is just, it's not true. It's not true. It doesn't actually fit at all the story of this creating new earth together and this whole energy of moving into a higher dimensional frequency, shifting within our body, in our earth, and shifting into more light and creating this new earth. The destruction of the earth, the danger of this process does not make any sense. These are all lies. We have to understand that the control energies that took over the planet and spiritual evolution in Atlantean time very deliberately created catastrophes to create this fear programming, associating catastrophe directly with spiritual awakening. It's a lie. And burying through catastrophe the old ancient temples, the truth of our actual history. They had to bury that truth. And you know what? In order for us to get, maybe that's part of this bridge we're building into the future, is learning more truths coming out about our true history. But then everything falls apart. Like every book you would have, textbook in school, you have to throw that shit out the window. Our history's wrong. Our science is wrong. The educational system itself is backwards and upside down. Our healthcare system, everything is a lie. Everything is based on a lie. And that's where you get to this point, and this is where humanity's at right now, because if the original thing that started the whole story and what we've been going by is a lie, then everything after that is also a lie. And so humanity, in order to face truth right now, everything has to fall apart in our whole fabric of reality. And that's why it's taking so long, because it's like humanity's clinging to what they know, and they'd actually rather be in fear and survival mode and trauma than let go of those structures, even though they're unhealthy and toxic. Right? We all know this. We all know this story. We've all played it out. In our personal lives with the Venus retrograde, we're looking at relationships where we've done this. Just hold on for dear life to that relationship. Make it work. Even if it's based on lies and toxic and not serving, the greater truth of who you are and what you're here for, or what we're all here for. And that's the essence, the quintessential essence of this time right now, is like we're just being asked to, we live in a world of lies. It's all based on lies. And we, of course, want to be like, wake people up to the lies and all that. Of course, that's a heavy energy when you're like, I feel like I need to wake people up and get them to see, and it's like, not your job, really. It's your job to be in truth. And that's not like specific constructs, because you get into searching for truth and you're going to find more lies and more truth and more questions and more layers. But this is like a fundamental truth, a spiritual truth of who we are. And can we show up in that? And that's what this Capricorn full moon seems to be about, is like maybe all of the constructs we're releasing, the fear programming and the contracts are all where we've been living lies. That goes back to that Chiron and Aries being so activated. That is coming off now. We just have a couple more days of that Sun and Mercury in square to Chiron. Pressure and frustration around where we haven't been able to fully express ourselves. And maybe part of that frustration has to do with the Venus turning direct in Gemini, where it's like, I don't even know who I am. But I know there's something inside of me. This is a supernova soul. Feels like there's something I'm here to do. There's something more. There's something missing. There's something, I got to go do it. I got to figure out my path and purpose, right? And it's like that feeling comes from not knowing who you are, operating on a very small percentage of your power and potential, you know? And so it's like, here we are wanting and wanting and wanting that purpose and that path and that meaning. And yet we can't even get a hold or a handle or receive, this is the Cancer energy right now, that bigger truth of who we are. And then the supernova soul's waiting around for permission from the people around them, these lower karmic relationships, being like, hey, will you see who I am and support me in my spiritual purpose and mission? And they're like, that's silly. Right? Like, come to earth. You're just being crazy. You're just crazy. Like, just fit in and be a regular person. Stop it. You know? So it's like, this is when we say, oh, that bridge is never going to take me where I want to go. And I got to build a new one. And that comes from this truth and like being brave and courageous to step into that greater, wider truth of who you are. And so this is kind of displayed in this energy right now of these over this weekend and this full moon. And we've got Mars at the early degrees of Aries coming. It's come off the square with the nodes. So it's cool. It's like ready to go. But it's this desire to thrive, this desire to really live, this desire to have zest and passion. And it's like everything in our life is like, oh, no, can't do that, can't do that, stay home, don't do that, don't, you know, and it's like, ugh, Mars is like really wants to go. And then, of course, there's that foreboding tension out there of this Mars retrograde that is the lighter part of 2020. And I was just looking, and it's like at the end of this month, at the end of July, Mercury comes out of retrograde, then Venus comes out of its retrograde shadow, and then Mercury comes out of its retrograde shadow. And right there in those few days, Mars heads into its retrograde shadow. Like it all happens together. So it's like, ooh, we're getting out. And then but the Mars retrograde is a totally different set of issues and set of feelings, a set of, emotions and stuff. So, know that it is a different chapter, but it is this kerfuffle that we found ourselves in 2020 and that perfect storm. But so we talked about how the moon is in trine to Uranus, very, very sweet for this full moon. That puts the sun in sextile to Uranus. And so this is a really magical, those are the most positive, supportive, harmonizing transits. And it's really cool because the moon will be going then over Jupiter and Pluto right after it's full. And so it's like, okay, yeah, total breakdown, total ego death, total destruction of everything you thought, who you knew you were, and the stories and the lies upon lies upon lies and distortions. But it's about building something new, And so it's really a cool energy because this full moon in Capricorn is like break the ties, break the contracts, break free. That Chiron and Aries being so triggered. Be who you really are. Break the chains of everything that's kept you playing small. And it's all about letting go of the past. But then these transits, this trine and sextile with Uranus is saying, oh yeah, no, this is about the future. This is about something bigger, better, greater, more appropriate, more comfortable, more beautiful. And you're here to lead the way in that. You got to let yourself feel better, let yourself move into these higher timelines. And of course, then we come right back to those burning the bridges of those contracts that are keeping us in lower vibrational frequency. So, right after this full moon that happens in most of the world on the 5th, from the 6th to the 9th of July is the second that second set of exact conjunction with Jupiter and Pluto at 23 degrees, still both retrograde. We're going back. We're facing what hasn't been resolved in our breakdown of structures. And Venus coming out of the retrograde kind of being like, oh, okay, like this is what I want. Oh, this is what this has been about. Oh, this is why this came up in my life, right? And all of this being suspended between the past and the future, and burning bridges and building bridges. So now this lining up of planets, we got Mars and Aries right next sign over. We've got Uranus and Taurus, the next sign over, Venus and Gemini, and then Mercury and Cancer. And it's that star pattern, 4 signs represented in the flower of life pattern. It's saying we're here for a spiritual activation. That's what's happening on our planet. This is a spiritual activation, and the powers that be and the powers that were, and the powers that are trying to hold back this evolution. Everything in that whole Atlantean scenario, everything is about burying our true history, burying the technology, burying our power, disconnecting us from our truth. And it's like, now it's time to come, this is a spiritual awakening, and those forces, so many resources and energies going into holding back this spiritual evolution. So much. And it's like they're running out of resources, though. They're running out of cards to play. And nothing can stop this spiritual evolution. It was slowed down. Like, we're actually, it's like we haven't gotten back to where we were in Atlantean time when this whole thing started. But now it's like a rubber band that's been held back so long, and the fabric of the lower matrix that's held back this spiritual evolution is just disintegrating. That's what we're seeing. And the power behind this movement in the light, this is planetary bodies moving into activated parts of the galaxy. The control energies don't stand a chance through this, but they're still going to do everything they can in their power and exhaust their power. And, they're never going to give up until, they're just going to fight to the last battle. And that's where we are, basically. We're in this last battle. And the star pattern is saying this is a spiritual activation and nothing can stop it. And also it's like, even though nothing can stop it, we still are asked, and the supernova souls, what they're going through right now is being asked, being chosen, being called, and receiving that call and saying yes to your role in this. And it's scary. And it's like, that whole thing of like being so frustrated and stuck in the past, and recognizing that, actually, that might have been me clinging to those patterns and structures and contracts because I was scared of my potential and what lies ahead. This feeling of like, these things holding me back, working against me. And it's like, yeah, but part of you is way more comfortable there. But that's where we're running out of options. And the only way it's only going to get more uncomfortable for you in the lower matrix. It's only going to get more intense. It's only going to get more dramatic. It's only going to get, that's what you can expect there. It's going to squeeze the life out of you until you push through, sprout that seed. It's all working for your spiritual activation. And and pushing you over this edge of this dimensional shift. And so if your life feels really intense, it's like, maybe, and it's like, there's always this thing of astrology. It's like, okay, well, we'll get through this. And it's like, the message now, it's like, yeah, it's not, we're in it. We're in it, and you can't get out of it until you get out of the lower matrix and get out of these other constructs, and it's just going to get more uncomfortable till you do. And the place we are now is suspended, and we're going back and forth between those positive, more optimal timelines, visiting that energy, then being kicked right back down into the lower frequencies and cling to what we know. gets really horribly uncomfortable. We shoot off into the other direction. So yeah, pinball. And but this beautiful configuration, Mars and Aries, I want to express, I want to be true to who I am. I want to live fully. Uranus and Taurus, new value system, new way of, new wealth, new system of wealth, and new system of what matters to you, but also to in our collective. Venus in Gemini, and the exact here is Venus in Gemini in a semi-sextile, exactly one sign over at 7 degrees with Mercury in Cancer. And so Venus coming out of retrograde, I don't know what I want, who I am, and where I'm going. So a new direction. And then Mercury in Cancer, can you receive that higher timeline? Do you deserve it? Are you good enough? And that puts right back to the other side of the Cancers, the Capricorn, the Cancer-Capricorn axis, where all this other crap's going on in the full moon and everything. And that's where have you given your power away to stay alive, get your needs met? And is it appropriate to continue those contracts? Because they're all based on keeping you playing small, keeping you disconnected and in denial and lost and confused from your spiritual truth. So everything right now is working for you. And it's a magical time of, again, perhaps excruciatingly painful, because that's telling you you're in too low of a frequency. And then do you have permission? And maybe those loyalty contracts, it's well, I'd rather stay here in this pain than feel the guilt of leaving other people behind in this pain. And that's what we're getting right now subconsciously from the people around us. Who do you think you are going out of this? You can't leave us here like this, right? And it's so powerful, and it's so subtle. It's so subconscious. But these things are being revealed. Like we talked about, we move towards those higher timelines so that the lower, what's keeping you in the lower frequencies is revealed and can be addressed. Once it's a lot of times how do I break the contracts? How do I do it? How do I know? But so much of it is in the revealing of it, because once you see it, it's hard to keep it. When you really, really see it. And that's the deal with this dance we're doing on the suspension bridge between the past and the future. So hang in there. Know this is a magical, powerful time trying to squeeze you out of the seed and into your greater potential, which also means feeling good and receiving support and being held by this experience. That Cancer energy, we got to really use this Cancer energy, Mercury and the Sun, Mercury retrograde in Cancer. It's definitely not that fun of energy, and yet it's so important for us right now to rearrange our conceptual reality around receiving everything that has to do, that's in sextile to Uranus and Taurus, so that has everything to do with the new value system. New value system is oh, this is the wealth in this world. My spiritual light. I've only been using a little tiny bit of it. And now I'm being asked to step into the bigger of it. And I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what it looks like. I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I'm doing. And there's nobody else around me who can relate to this. They think I'm insane, So here we are, and it's called the star pattern in the sky. And again, the stars just lining up so epically. So take advantage of this Capricorn full moon to burn those bridges and build some new bridges into some new possibilities, and take that leap into that bigger truth of who you are that we're being asked to take right now. And I'm so glad we're here together. And I hope you can consider joining on tomorrow, July 3rd. Doing this ahead of time. It's before the moon even moves into Capricorn, but we can set the energy here, this Capricorn full moon activation, and be present with these energies, set our vibration, set our field, stay connected through the weekend energetically together to make the most, hold hands while we jump over into that more ideal timeline together. If we have a bridge or not, right? Just take the leap. So I look forward to seeing you there or on the next update. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm Adrienne Elise. Namaste.